everybody, and welcome to Parks Bros. It is Drew and Hunter.
Hi.
And we are finally getting around to this. This is our review of HangTime at Knott's Berry Farm. HangTime just opened up in May of 2018 in the boardwalk section of the park. This coaster is a Gerstlauer Infinity. The park likes to call it a dive coaster. I don't think I'd agree with that, would you, Hunter?
No, not really.
I mean, it checks all the boxes. It's just not your traditional dive coaster. But this coaster has 5 inversions, a 96-degree drop, and even a vertical lift hill. So let's get into this and finally give our full thoughts and review on this.
Sure.
So before we get started, let's actually talk about how many rides we've had on this. I've had 20 even. Hunter, how many have you had?
4.
He said 4. So a little disproportionate on the two of us, but I think we've both ridden it enough to give our full thoughts and review. So let's just get into this thing. HangTime is in the back section of the park in the boardwalk area, so it's neighboring Coast Rider and Accelerator. Those are the 2 nearest coasters to it. And to get there, there are 3 or 4 different paths you can technically take, but as long as you just keep going straight all the way to the back of the park, and then usually you're going to turn right unless you took the Fiesta Village path, which you will actually turn left after you hit the entrance of Accelerator. Now, HangTime is actually probably the hardest coaster to get to in the morning because it's farthest away from the entrance. Now, some people would say Coast Rider or Accelerator, but it's easier to get to those attractions because they have a path leading straight to it. Now, HangTime sits right in the middle of 2 major pathways, like directly in the middle, and it's really kind of hard to get to because you have to walk all the way around HangTime and the Calico Mine ride to get to it. So once you walk up to HangTime, you will see this beautiful coaster in front of you with an amazing color scheme of this light blue with some tan supports, and it just looks amazing. HangTime is arguably the best looking coaster in the day at Knott's, with its twisting inversions and crazy support system and its beautiful color scheme. It has 3 trains, 1 yellow, 1 white, and 1 orange, and you will be able to tell that from the front car, and the front car pretty much only besides you looking at the numbers on the side of the trains. But outside of HangTime, there is a tester seat and a beautiful looking entrance sign with the logo, and it's even better looking at night when it's all lit up, but we'll get to that later. And you will walk under this entrance sign with the left side being the standby and the right side being for fast lane. But this left standby line actually has a bit of theming compared to other lines in the park.
Kind of.
Well, they've got sand and dirt everywhere, which is really a nice touch because the whole theme is around surfing and the beach, and Southern California's beaches in particular. There are capsized boats and starfish and
Surfboards.
even surfboards that are being worked on. Yeah, and there's even the maintenance bay is disguised as a surf shop, which I found really cool to look at. And if you even look closely at the dirt and sand, you can even see some seashells buried inside of it, which I find really cool.
I didn't even notice that.
Yeah, Hunter didn't even notice that there were seashells. And there's actually a lot of them if you really keep a close lookout.
It's amazing when you go in when I went in there first time, I went in there to ride it, and there was a bunch of kids. Well, it was actually just one kid, but he was walking in the middle of the dirt theming.
Yeah, that does happen a lot with this ride. If you're ever in line, you will see trash on the ground in the switchbacks, and people line jumping and jumping on the plants in the queue, which is really sad to me because it looks really good. It really does for a Cedar Fair park. Also, the switchbacks themselves aren't too themed. They're just silver bars for the actual ropes, as you'd call them, I guess. But they do their duty, and also there's this nice covering overhead to protect you from the sun, especially on those hot summer days. But it does kind of ruin your view of most of the coaster when you're in line. But there are still some stunning views of this coaster in line. It is probably the best line in the park just because of the views you can get of the ride itself. That and Accelerator are the top 2 for that in the park. So if you're riding HangTime at night or right after sunset or even right before sunset, you will really be able to see these standout lights that are all over the track and inside the track and even pointing upwards at the supports that make HangTime probably the best looking coaster at night, arguably, and maybe second place to Monster, or I mean, Monster is really the only competitor at night for best looking coaster, I would say. Both of these coasters have actually been done by KCL, which KCL, you did a fantastic job with these lights. I can't praise you enough. But
they look really cool.
Yeah, and it really adds to the ride at night. It makes night rides so much better than day rides, especially if you get in the front row, which is probably my favorite overall ride is front row at night. But there are even these tracer/chaser lights that stay under the train itself and follow the train throughout the whole course, which even gives a cooler perspective when you're sitting in the front row. So now we've waited long enough in line, let's get on the coaster itself. So you start out by rolling slowly into a block brake section right out of the station until your chain dog is attached onto the train, and you head up this vertical lift hill. Now this vertical lift hill really makes the ride seem longer than it seems because it's almost an element in itself because of how much fun it is and how kind of disorienting it is, at least for people that haven't had a vertical lift hill experience in the past.
Feels like you're gonna fall out when you truly aren't. It's really weird.
Yes, because there are only lap bars on this ride as well. I forgot to mention that.
There's seatbelts.
Well, there's seatbelts too, but you're only gonna feel the lap bar. And so you do kind of slide out a little bit on the vertical lift hill because the seats are angled a little bit backwards. Yeah. So it does kind of feel like you're sliding out, but it's great if you can't afford a chiropractor. It really feels nice on the back. It's just a nice stretching position, and I've totally gone on it just for that before. But then after you crest this lift hill, which is 150 feet tall, you hit the holding brake section, which is at a 60-degree angle looking down, and it's really cool. I think it's really cool in pretty much every row, especially back and front, because back you're way higher up, and in front you see straight down to the people below you. And if there are people in line below you, you could totally be waving, or you could be waving to the people on the boardwalk. We do that all the time and kind of freak people out. It's kind of funny. But then right after this holding brake for about 6 or 7 seconds, I think,
just go down.
Yes, you just go down and you hit this insane drop, which is 96 degrees, which was our first beyond vertical drop on a roller coaster. And I must say, it's probably one of my favorite drops on a coaster. Yeah. Especially in the back, you get some wicked airtime. Front, not so much, but back especially, you get some crazy ejector airtime on this drop. I think it's probably my favorite element of the ride. Hunter, I don't know what you think of it, but
the drop is good. It's not, to me, it's not my favorite part of the ride. My favorite part of the ride is the airtime hill near the end.
Well, we'll get to that eventually. Yeah. But yeah, you do get some insane ejector, especially in the back. Back row is definitely the best row for the drop, but it's freaking awesome. After this drop, you will hit some kind of forceful positive G's, enough to staple you, regardless if you got stapled before or not by the ride ops. And then you hit this like twist and dive non-inverting loop element, which if you're on the left side of the train, you actually do get a nice little pop of floater airtime, which is always nice. And then you kind of dive down and go straight into this element called the negative G stall loop. And this whole element is supposed to give you negative G's and crazy hang time, but the problem is it's running too fast most of the time to actually get great hang time. You get better hang time in the left side of the train, but it makes me sad that you don't get nearly as much hang time as you should because the train is going too fast most of the time.
It's called hang time, so it doesn't really make sense if you're not getting that much hang time.
Yeah, and it's called a negative G stall loop, and sometimes it's just kind of floater. I don't know, it's one of my favorite elements of the ride if you're sitting on the left side, especially in like the middle 2 rows, but that's about it. I don't know, Hunter, what do you think of this element?
Honestly, it goes so quick I don't really even notice much things.
Exactly. Yeah, it does go way too quick to actually be noticeable as a full signature element besides the drop. And then after this, you'll hit a corkscrew, which is kind of extended to be taller, which is a little weird feeling at first. And at the top of this element, there is this kind of crazy shuffle that happens, especially in the second and third rows. Fourth is definitely smoothest on this element, but expect a nice jolt to the side in any other row. It's probably my least favorite element on the ride just because of that jolt. It's kind of jarring and kind of takes away from the ride for about a half a second to a second, but that's all you need to really take away from the ride. Hunter, what do you think of the corkscrew?
It's okay.
Just okay?
It's not as good as some other corkscrews I've been on.
True. I always love Flight Deck's corkscrew. It's probably my favorite.
I haven't been on Flight Deck
Soon. But let's move on from the corkscrew. Right after this, you hit what they're calling a cutback, but it's not steep enough to be a cutback. It's in between an overbank and a cutback, which is technically a tongue, which is only on Space Mountain Mission 2 in Disneyland Paris. But it's technically at the right angle to be a tongue, so it's kind of a tongue. But if you're sitting on the right side of the train, you definitely get more of an inversion feeling. Now, if you're on the left, it just feels like an overbank. And that's about it. I don't know what else to say about this element, because it's just kind of, it's okay. Yeah. And then right after this, you hit probably my second favorite part of the ride, and Hunter's favorite part of the ride, this crazy airtime hill, which goes right over the entrance sign and makes for some beautiful photo ops if you're standing right there.
Yes.
And you pull some crazy ejector, I would say, in the front row. And in the back, too, I think it's not as strong in the back, but it's still really up there. But it's definitely my second favorite part of the ride, and Hunter's first, right?
Yes. It is way better in front. And to me, front row is the best. Well, in my opinion, at least.
Fair enough. I think front's better at night, but back is my favorite at day. Just because the airtime on that first drop. Whew. Whew. Anyways, right after the airtime hill, you will hit this nice Cobra roll, which is probably my favorite Cobra roll that I've ever been on, to be completely honest.
I've only been on 3.
Yeah, 3.
HangTime, Boomerang, and Scream.
4. Silver Bullet.
Silver Bullet.
It's all good. But this Cobra roll is probably my favorite because it does pull a lot of positive G's as you go in and out of it. Enough to kind of push your body down at times, especially with that lap bar. You won't really feel downward force in the normal way like you would on a B&M with the over-the-shoulder restraints, but with the lap bar, you're going to be pushed kind of forwards and your face might hit your knees. It's kind of what you feel. Yeah,
that's a little bit of hyperbole.
It is a hyperbole, but I'm trying to get the point across. But then at the end of this Cobra roll, you'll hit the camera spot, which will be on the left side of the train, which is always nice. Make sure you're posing before that second half of the Cobra roll. Once you hit that support, that little hand chopper in the middle of the Cobra roll, make sure you're posing by then so you can get your picture down. But then right after that, you hit this nice little pop of airtime into the brake run.
Where the picture is.
Yes.
It's an odd place for the picture.
It is.
I think the picture would have been better if they did it on the little stall right before the drop.
I think during the drop would have been better. But it's kind of hard to get a camera up there, you know?
Maybe the airtime hill.
Airtime hill would have been perfect, I think.
Yeah.
But then, people would be trying to take pictures of it, and then you'd have this giant bright flash, 4 times when they're trying to get a picture of it going over the airtime hill. Maybe, with the sign. I don't know. I don't know what Knott was thinking with it, but it works, but it's not the best place. But yeah, that's all of HangTime right there, and then you hit the brake run, you do a little 180 turnaround. If they're running 3 trains, be prepared to stay on that brake run for a couple of minutes. If they're running 2, you should be in the station within, another 30 seconds or so.
Since it's still new, they haven't really got the rhythm down with the new types of seatbelts.
Yeah, a lot of people have been very confused with the seatbelts themselves, and here's a tip. Hold the seatbelt, push it inwards into the buckle itself, and then try to unlatch it, and it will come undone. It's kind of like a car seat in the fact that if you pull it too quickly, it'll get stuck, and you kind of have to pull it slowly, and then it will release, if that makes any sense at all. But then you get off the ride, you go right into the gift shop, which is supposedly getting some new merchandise, which is good news, and we got to go check that out soon.
The old stuff's bad.
Yeah, it was just the HangTime logo on like a blue shirt, which was sad. But yeah, HangTime is a really great addition for Knott's. I don't think it's my favorite ride in the park. Hunter, is it your favorite ride in the park?
I'm still deciding.
Still deciding? Alright, fair enough. But it's not a super standout ride, I would say. But it is definitely a great ride for Southern California, and a different ride that realistically no SoCal enthusiast that has not traveled out of the state has been able to experience yet. And I actually really want to see more Gerstlauers in the future in the area, but
Besides
we'll see.
just the two being HangTime and Rewind Racers.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't mind a Rewind Racers clone, but we'll
Maybe
have to wait on that.
Disney?
Maybe a Disney. It's possible, eventually. I don't know. Maybe Ant-Man coaster. Maybe they could do some, like, effects to make you look bigger in the second half, and then you get smaller or something. That'd be kind of cool. Pull a Journey Through Inner Space. They could totally do it, I think. Anyways, that's completely off topic and really kind of weird. But, HangTime. Let's give our full rating on it. Out of 10. Hunter, what do you give it?
8.
An 8.
Yes.
Alright. I'm gonna give it an 8 as well. So that means the Parks
Really?
Bros rating is an 8 flat. Just a flat 8.
Really? It's not like we discussed this earlier or something.
But yeah, so we're actually gonna rate this just a straight 8. I don't think it's as good as Joker.
It was kind of overhyped a little bit.
I'm sorry. That was my fault.
A little bit?
That was pretty much my fault. It looked... Okay, this is one thing about the ride that I gotta say. It looks way better than it actually is. Would you agree? The thing is, if it ran slower, like 2 or 3 miles an hour slower, maybe even a little slower than that, if it got true hang time through every element, it would probably be my favorite ride in the park. But it doesn't do that. It never really does that. So, that's my main problem with it. It doesn't really give hang time. Joker still gives more hang time than hang time. How crazy is that? I don't get it. But I do think it's a beautiful fit for the park. I do think it's the most fun coaster at the park. If you want just a coaster to have fun on, HangTime's your choice. Accelerator would be intensity, and Ghost Rider would be length and intensity, I would argue. But HangTime is just the most fun ride at the park. It's not the best, but it's the most fun. It's like Full Throttle at Magic Mountain. You don't go on it for this crazy intense ride. You go on it because it's fun. So, I will have to leave it there, but make sure to check out our Patreon, our Discord, our Instagram, our Facebook, and just to keep up with all the updates that we will have coming to you soon, and also some new reviews for Incredicoaster and Kung Fu Panda, which they will be coming out very soon. And we hope you enjoyed. Make sure to like and subscribe. It really helps us out. And as always, we'll see you on the next ride.